In the past 12 months, cybercriminal gangs from Russia, just Russia, and just in the past 12 months, have made over $2.5 billion stealing and selling your credit card numbers, your identities, and your passwords. And they've made money by sending spam from your computers because most of them are infected. Most of the folks here, your computers are already infected and under control in something called a botnet, where someone can dial in or remote into your computer and do lots of things with it. Among them, sending spam, stealing your banking credentials, and those kinds of things. This industry has become massive, sophisticated, and complex, but they're people just like us. They're just like you and me. In fact, every morning they get up, put on a shirt and tie, kiss their family goodbye, and they go and they drive to an office building just like yours. But instead of doing accounting or human resources or working in a call center, they build sophisticated software that can steal money from Americans. And this network of companies, this ecosystem of cyber criminal gangs has become very sophisticated and very complex. In fact, there are distributors, wholesalers. So, for example, the Target breach, which I'll talk about in a second, the Target breach. Most of the money that was made by cyber criminals from the Target breach was not from the fraud that they were able to perpetrate on your cards. It was by selling and reselling those credit card numbers, or selling additional information. Maybe they were able to combine your address, your home address, and other information about you with your credit card so those cards became more valuable. And what we've learned over the past couple of years through lots of research is that in America, 97% of all organizations have been compromised in some way. And maybe money was missing from a bank account, maybe credit card information was stolen, medical records. All of this can be monetized online. And it's become very expensive for organizations. In fact, Target by themselves will spend almost $500 million recovering from their breach from Black Friday of 2013. $500 million. That's a big, big number. Most of this goes into recovery, paying firms like mine to come in to help them contain damage and recover from the incident. Some of it's from paying banks to reprint cards. Some of it's for credit monitoring for their clients or for their customers. And what's interesting about this is that this industry and the complexities continue to grow. This is an industry that is really in the very fetal stages, despite its $300 billion per year price tag. Now, what's happened and what's made this possible is really what we call sort of the cybersecurity storm, the perfect cybersecurity storm. A combination of three things. One, all of your businesses have gotten very hard to defend. Think about where your data is, right? The important stuff. Who's got access to it? Where it goes, right? Between social media and wireless networks and virtualization and the cloud, mobile devices. It's how do we keep track of our data? Businesses are just very different than they used to be even 3 years ago, certainly 5 years ago. The second thing is that it's very easy and very compelling to get into cybercrime today. In most countries where it's not illegal to hack Americans, by the way, kid growing up has two choices. He can either go and bag groceries for minimum wage, or he can work for a cyber criminal gang and buy BMWs for every person in his family. And this is a true story. This is happening every day. And the third is that the tools to get into cybercrime are available to each one of you. In fact, any one of you could go home today after this presentation, and for about $500, between $500 and $1,500, you could download all the software you need to start robbing banks. $1,500, that's all it takes. And actually, in fact, the malware that was written and executed against Target and Home Depot and a number of others could be had online for about $1,500. So it's very easy, and the motivations are great, and there are very few economic or legislative barriers to get into cybercrime today. And so we're fighting a real serious problem. Now, on the other side of this coin, we do things that aren't very good for ourselves, right? So on the way here, each one of you, on average, was photographed about 15 times without you knowing about it. You also ended up on about 90 seconds worth of video that you probably didn't know about. The texts that you made on the way, the calls that you made, were all tracked. That metadata was going into databases in the cloud, and that information is now available to hundreds, maybe thousands of people and organizations, right? Maybe it's being used for good purposes, maybe it's not. And so we as a society have not quite figured out how we handle this kind of information. Because in addition to all of that, your smartphone right now is broadcasting your exact GPS coordinates, maybe to your friends, maybe to governments around the world, certainly to the NSA, and to other people that perhaps you're just not aware of. And think about your texts, your medical records, your credit card information. All this has been entered online or provided at your consent online somewhere or on a form somewhere. And the odd thing is that we all agreed to it. All this information that we make unprivate is something that we've agreed to in terms and conditions that through some research that someone else did suggests that if you actually read through all the terms and conditions that you're subject to right now, it would take you 7 months to read them. So that being said, we have all agreed to these privacy invasions. So how do we get here? All right, so it's an interesting problem that cybersecurity, most folks, when they think of cybersecurity, they think of firewalls and antivirus and a lot of praying. But really, it's come down to a people issue, because there are really two things in cybersecurity. There's the feelings of cybersecurity, and then there's the reality. And they don't always connect. They don't always overlap. And we as humans have gotten good at making certain decisions. We've survived for thousands of years, but despite that, we're inherently bad at assessing cyber risk. Let me ask you a question. When you go to the beach, summer, right? Great weather, you're out at the beach, you're enjoying yourself. Are you guys more afraid of sharks or vending machines? I'm guessing sharks, right? I'm just gonna take a wild guess. I'm probably sharks. Now, if I told you that you're 10 times as likely to be killed by a vending machine at the beach than you are a shark, now what are you more afraid of? You're probably still more afraid of sharks. And you can't really help that because your brain works a certain way and it tends to over-exaggerate risks that we have no control over and risks that are dramatic. 9/11, right? 9/11 changed our lives forever. Every one of us can remember where we were on that day. And despite the fact that it was really one event over the past 10 years, it's changed us. It's indelible because the impact was so great. It was so unexpected and we felt like we were just absolutely out of control, right? We had no control over that situation. But think about this, since 9/11, 1,000 times more people have been killed texting while driving than by terrorism. Yet we feel no fear of that, right? We have no problem texting while we drive everywhere. And that's because we have complete control over that environment. It's our decision, and it's boring, right? Somebody gets killed by texting while they're driving, they don't make the headlines. They're not on the front page of the news. And so this whole risk assessment process has escaped us as human beings. So where does this lead us? Well, today, as we sit here, your smartphones have basically replaced the desktop PCs that you've been using for years, right? We can do everything on our smartphone today that we used to need a computer for. What we haven't realized is that these smartphones have just become little computers, just like all the things around us. So today, we experience amazing leaps and bounds of entertainment and commerce and connectivity and communications. Tomorrow, what does it look like? Well, today, the brakes in your car, the HVA system in this building, certainly your smartphone, your insulin pump, they're all connected to the internet. How many of those things do you think have been developed or architected with cybersecurity in mind? I'm guessing not too many, right? So now fast forward a couple of years, they estimate by 2020 that 50 billion devices will be connected to the internet. 50 billion. That's 10 for every person on the globe, or to make it a little more relevant, that's about 1.2 billion for every person in this room. That was a joke. These are the jokes, folks. So you can imagine that in a world where today we experience a massive growth in cybercrime because things are connected to the internet and people aren't very good at assessing the risk and doing something about it, that tomorrow we can't really describe. We have no idea where all of this is actually going. But I can tell you that when airplanes and air traffic control systems, lots of devices, your refrigerator will be able to order groceries for you. So if I were a cyber criminal and I wanted access to your home network, I'm not going to attack your wireless router, which probably will have some security on it. I'm going to go after your refrigerator because it tends to be the weakest link. And it was not designed with security in mind. So where do we go from here? I ask that of you, right? My job as a Chief Security Strategist is to help companies avoid being hacked, right? That starts with people. And I have to tell you that people have become, by far, the first and the greatest line of defense for organizations. And so where do we go from here is really up to you. Every one of your organizations, every business that you work for today has likely been compromised. And it probably started with the failure of a human being. They likely clicked on a link, went to an infected website, or downloaded an attachment that they shouldn't have, installed software from the internet that they didn't necessarily trust. Right? It starts and it ends with people. If we're going to be safe in the next year, in the next century, as it relates to cybercrime, it's going to take all of you, the people you know and the people that they know, to raise their awareness and really heighten their diligence of the types of threats that are facing us and the things that can happen. Otherwise, I'll be back here next year talking about the same thing. That's my story. Thank you very much.